We regret to inform you, your stomach sinks. It's the job you dreamed of, the opportunity you believed was yours, and now denied. Or maybe it wasn't a job. Maybe it was a person. You put yourself out there, opened your heart, only to hear the quiet but crushing words, "I don't feel the same way." And strangely, what happens next? Instead of letting go, your mind clings tighter. The rejection, the no, becomes magnetic. The thing that slipped out of reach now feels even more valuable. Why? Why do we as human beings sometimes want the very thing that rejects us? Why does denial transform into desire? This paradox has puzzled poets, psychologists, and philosophers for centuries. But one man, perhaps more than any other, gave us the language to understand it: Carl Jung. Jung believed that our minds are not simple, logical machines. Instead, they are shadowed landscapes, full of hidden desires, unconscious drives, and archetypal patterns that shape every choice we make. And in that hidden world lies the answer to this strange alchemy: how rejection can ignite longing. This is not just about romance. It's about jobs, opportunities, friendships, even material possessions. What we are denied suddenly becomes the thing we crave most. Psychologists call it inverse psychology, or the forbidden fruit effect. Jung would have called it something deeper: the projection of our shadow. The hunger for the missing piece of ourselves that we unconsciously see in others. And here's the promise. By the end of this video, you'll understand why rejection often pulls us closer instead of pushing us away. How our unconscious mind turns no into "I must have it." And most importantly, how to harness this power. How to see rejection not as an ending, but as a beginning. Because if you can understand the secret link between rejection and desire, you can transform how you see failure, heartbreak, and disappointment. You can stop being trapped by the magnetic pull of denial, and instead, use it to fuel your growth, your self-discovery, and your destiny. So stay with me as we step into Jung's world, a world where rejection is not weakness, a world where desire is not always what it seems, a world where the things that wound us most may be the very things that shape us into who we are meant to become. When Carl Jung looked into the human mind, he didn't see a machine made of logic and reason. He saw an ocean, vast, dark, and full of unseen currents. He called it the unconscious. To Jung, our conscious thoughts, the things we know and can name, are only the thin surface of that ocean. Beneath lies a world that shapes our choices, our fears, our desires, without us even realizing it. He called this the collective unconscious, a storehouse of memories, symbols, and instincts shared by all humankind. Inside that collective realm live the archetypes, universal patterns that repeat through myths, dreams, and stories. The hero, the lover, the mother, the shadow. Echoes of human experience that live inside each of us. And then there is the shadow, the part of ourselves we deny, suppress, or hide. It is everything we refuse to accept about who we are. Anger, jealousy, fear, pride. Jung believed that the more we push these traits away, the stronger they grow in the dark. So what happens when we face rejection? When someone tells us no, something primal stirs in the unconscious. It awakens the shadow. It exposes the parts of us we've buried, our insecurity, our hunger to be seen, our need for worth. Rejection doesn't just wound the ego, that touches the deepest layer of the psyche. It reminds us of our separation from wholeness, from being fully accepted, fully loved. And that's where the paradox begins. The more we are denied, the more our mind projects value onto the one who denies us. We begin to imagine they hold something we need: validation, purpose, identity. But Jung would say that isn't true desire. It's projection. Projection is when the unconscious paints its inner world onto someone else. We don't see them. We see our own hidden self mirrored back. We chase them, not because of who they are, but because they represent the part of us we've lost. This is why rejection burns so deeply. It forces us to confront that missing piece. In love, we may project our anima or animus, the ideal inner image of the feminine or masculine. In careers, we may project our unfulfilled hero, the part of us that longs to be recognized. When these projections are rejected, we feel as if a piece of our soul has been torn away. But Jung saw an opportunity here. He said that pain is the path to individuation, the process of becoming whole. If we withdraw our projections and face our shadow, we integrate what was lost. We stop chasing validation outside and begin to find it within. We all know the feeling. The moment someone turns away, says no, or drifts out of reach, that's when we want the most. It's irrational, it's painful, but it's also human. Psychologists call it the scarcity principle, the rule that says we value what is limited. When something becomes rare or forbidden, our mind assigns it greater worth, but Jung would have said this is only the surface of a deeper truth. We don't just crave what we can't have, we crave what we have lost within ourselves. The pull of the unattainable. Think about it. If a person shows too much interest in us, we feel safe, maybe even bored. But if they pull away, suddenly our attention sharpens. Their distance turns into a challenge, and our mind begins to chase. This happens in romance, in careers, in social status, even in our creative pursuits. The job we didn't get becomes the one that defines our ambition. The lover who left becomes the one we can't forget. The audience that rejects us becomes the one we most long to win. It's as if rejection doesn't close a door. It paints it gold. The psychology of scarcity. Behavioral scientists have tested this for decades. In one study, 2 identical jars of cookies were placed before participants. One jar was full, the other almost empty. Almost everyone rated the cookies in the scarce jar as more delicious. Even though they were exactly the same, the mind equates rarity with value. In relationships, the same mechanism plays out. The moment someone becomes less available, we perceive them as more desirable. But Jung would ask a different question. Why do we react this way? Why does absence ignite desire? Jung's shadow desire. Jung believed the answer lies not in logic, but in the unconscious. Every human being carries a hidden side, or the shadow it filled with traits we repress or reject. Our mind seeks wholeness, balance between opposites, and what we lack within, we unconsciously search for outside. So when we meet someone who embodies a quality we've buried, confidence, mystery, freedom, we feel magnetically drawn. If that person then rejects us, the longing intensifies, because it isn't really them we want. It's the lost part of ourselves they represent. Rejection awakens shadow desire, attraction to the qualities we've disowned. It's not love, it's recognition, a mirror of what's missing. Case study, love. Imagine a person who's always been the caretaker, gentle, selfless, accommodating. They fall for someone distant, unavailable, emotionally cold. Why? Because that person carries the strength, detachment, and self-focus the caretaker has repressed. When that love is rejected, the pain cuts deep, not just because they've lost the other, but because they've lost connection with that hidden power within. Until they reclaim it, the cycle repeats. Case study, career. A young artist spends years submitting work to galleries, always hearing no. But each rejection becomes fuel. They told you not to touch it, not to look at it, not to want it. And suddenly that's all you can think about. Why does the forbidden feel magnetic? Because the mind doesn't understand no. It only hears the echo of the thing being denied. This is inverse psychology, the art of turning don't into desire. When something is off limits, our brains label it important. Scarcity creates value. What we can't have begins to glow in gold. Think of a child in the cookie jar. They barely notice it until you say, don't touch. Now it's treasure. Rebellion becomes proof of freedom. Marketers use this every day. Limited edition. Only 3 left. They sell you the illusion of rarity. You don't chase the product. You chase control. And in love, it's the same pattern. The person who pulls away becomes irresistible. The one who ignores you suddenly matters most. Rejection triggers fascination because attention feels abundant, but absence feels sacred. Carl Jung called this the work of the trickster, the part of the psyche that teaches through contradiction. The trickster says don't, so you'll discover why you want. He deceives you into awakening. In every myth he wears a mask. Loki, Hermes the fool, agents of chaos who make you see truth through mischief. The forbidden fruit was never about fruit. It was about awareness. To taste what was denied is to realize that the power wasn't in the object, but in the tension between wanting and not having. Modern life feeds on this illusion. Social media whispers, you're missing something. Locked features, rare drops, exclusive clubs, the digital trickster in disguise. Each don't becomes a lure. Each not yet fuels the chase. There's even an experiment. People were told, don't think of a white bear. They couldn't stop thinking about it. That's the mind's paradox. What we resist persists. Inverse psychology manipulates control. When someone tells you what not to want, you crave it. When they restrict your choice, you fight to reclaim it. But true power begins when you see the game. The trickster isn't your enemy. He's your reflection. He reveals what still controls you. He laughs every time you say, I don't care, while still thinking about it. Once you notice the pattern, the spell breaks. The forbidden fruit fades. You stop chasing what rejects you and start choosing what aligns with you. Because the real freedom isn't in getting what you want, it's in understanding why you wanted it. Awareness is freedom, and freedom begins when desire ends. They say love begins with connection, but sometimes it begins with rejection. When someone pulls away, our heart doesn't let go. It clings tighter, because rejection doesn't just wound the heart. It wounds the ego. The mind whispers, if they don't want me, I must make them want me. Desire becomes proof of worth, and the chase, once romantic, turns into a mirror for our pride. Carl Jung would call this an anima animus projection. We fall in love not with the person, but with a part of ourselves we've forgotten. The beloved becomes a symbol, the inner feminine or masculine energy we've yet to integrate. Rejection from them feels like rejection from our own soul. That's why unrequited love hurts so deeply. It isn't just them saying no. It's life saying, look inside. Think of ghosting. Silence where there once was warmth. In the absence of closure, the imagination fills the gap. We replay messages, revisit memories, and in doing so, we feed the fantasy. The one who left becomes larger than life. A myth built from what we can't have. Social media amplifies the wound. You see their posts, their stories, their curated happiness, and every glimpse reignites the illusion that if you were enough, they'd return. But that's the trick of the digital shadow, comparing your reality to someone else's performance. The truth is, rejection often intensifies attraction because it exposes the parts of ourselves still seeking validation. It turns love into a negotiation with the ego. If they choose me, then I matter. But healthy desire doesn't demand proof. It grows in freedom, not in pursuit. To want someone who wants you back, that is love. To chase someone who denies you, that is the ego's hunger disguised as romance. So when rejection comes, don't run after what's leaving. Ask what it's revealing. Sometimes love's no is the psyche's way of saying, come home to yourself. Rejection isn't just personal. It's professional. And for many, it becomes the moment that defines who they are. Albert Einstein was told he'd never amount to much. His teachers called him slow. He couldn't even land a teaching job after graduation. But in that silence, that rejection, he began thinking differently. He stopped chasing approval and started listening to his own mind. That's where genius was born. J.K. Rowling was rejected 12 times before Harry Potter found a home. Each no became a mirror reflecting not failure, but persistence. Every closed door whispered, not yet. Thomas Edison once said, I didn't fail 1,000 times. I found 1,000 ways that didn't work. That's not denial. That's individuation, Jung's word for becoming who you're meant to be. Because every no from the world pushes you closer to the yes within yourself. Rejection in Jungian psychology isn't punishment. It's initiation, a necessary break from conformity. The universe strips away illusions, forcing the soul to grow its own roots. We often seek validation from systems, bosses, peers, but when that validation disappears, the psyche turns inward. It asks, what do I truly want? That question marks the birth of the self. The deeper identity beyond society's applause. Career. Rejection isn't the end of ambition. It's the purification of it. It burns away false motives, leaving only the core desire, the one aligned with your purpose. Carl Jung once wrote, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Rejection is that pain. It cracks the surface of who you thought you were, so that something more authentic can emerge. So the next time you hear no, don't close the door. Because sometimes the world must reject you, so that you can finally accept yourself. Rejection hurts, but in Jungian psychology, pain is never the end. It's the beginning of transformation. It's life's way of forcing the psyche to evolve. Here's how you turn rejection into growth. Step 1, acknowledge the wound. Don't run from the sting. Feel it, because awareness is the first stage of healing. When you suppress rejection, it sinks into the unconscious, where it grows into resentment or self-doubt. Jung said, "So until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Step 2, analyze the shadow projection. Ask yourself, what part of me felt rejected? Often rejection mirrors the part of ourselves we've denied or disowned. By observing that pain, you reclaim lost energy and begin integrating the shadow into wholeness. Step 3, detach from ego-driven desire. You are not defined by who accepts or rejects you. The ego craves validation, but the soul seeks truth. When you detach, you stop needing others to confirm your worth. You become self-sustaining. Step 4, redirect energy into individuation and purpose. Channel the energy of rejection into creation. Write, build, learn, evolve. Every no carries fuel for the next version of you. That's individuation. Turning wounds into wisdom. Practical reflection. Next time you face rejection, pause and write, what is this teaching me about myself? Then breathe, because that's not an ending. It's the moment your true self begins to emerge. Carl Jung lived in the early 1900s, but his insights on the human psyche have never been more relevant than today. Look around. We live in a world built on psychological triggers. Marketers call it scarcity. Jung would call it projection of desire. When something is rare, a limited edition, a last chance offer, it awakens the same unconscious craving that rejection once did. We want what seems just out of reach. It's not the product we chase, it's the feeling of being chosen. Social media magnifies this illusion. The endless scroll, the highlight reels, the subtle fear of missing out. FOMO is simply rejection rewritten for the digital age. Each post whispers, others are living better than you. And in chasing approval, likes, followers, recognition, we strengthen the ego's hunger and silence the soul's voice. But here's where Jung's wisdom saves us. He reminds us that true worth doesn't come from validation, it comes from integration, from knowing your shadows, owning your desires, and walking your own path. Rejection in this modern world can still be your greatest teacher. When a job, person, or audience turns you away, it's not the end of your story. It's the psyche inviting you to evolve beyond the need for approval. Jung's timeless lesson is this: in a culture obsessed with being wanted, peace begins when you no longer need to be. We returned to where it all began. That quiet room, that unread message, that closed door. Once it felt like the end. The silence after rejection, the ache of being unseen. But through Carl Jung's lens, we see it differently now. Rejection was never punishment. It was redirection. It was life whispering, you were looking in the wrong mirror. Each no you've carried was not a wound, it was a doorway. Every closed path pushed you closer to your real one. Every heartbreak broke you open, so that something deeper could enter. You learned that wanting is easy, but understanding yourself, that's rare. And maybe the things that rejected you were never yours to begin with. Maybe they were lessons, wrapped in the illusion of loss. Carl Jung said, what you resist persists, what you embrace transforms. And now you understand. To embrace rejection is to disarm it. To face it is to free yourself from it. Because every time you stopped chasing and started listening, you stepped closer to yourself. Not the one that seeks validation, but the one that simply is. So as you walk away from the door that once closed, know this: you have not been denied. You've been redirected toward the path of individuation. You're becoming. And if this journey spoke to something inside, if you found a piece of yourself in this story, then share it, because someone out there is still standing at their closed door, believing it's the end. Let them know it's only the beginning. Like, share, and subscribe. Not for validation, but to keep building this space, where minds awaken and souls remember. They were never rejected, only transformed.